I want to give you some hope for your children. Hi, my name is Gretchen Baskerville, and I'm the author of The Life-Saving Divorce, Hope for People Leaving Destructive Relationships. I've been a Christian divorce recovery leader in churches for more than 20 years. And let me say right up front, I believe in the sanctity of marriage. God meant marriages to be loving, faithful, and lifelong. But what do people of faith do when their marriage is the exact opposite? That's my focus. If you're a woman or man who needs a life-saving divorce, you're in the right place. You may have never heard of that term, but I'm sure you understand it already. We're not talking about an I'm bored divorce, or I miss the single life divorce, or I feel unfulfilled divorce, or I just found someone cuter divorce. We're talking about the 40% of divorces in the United States for very serious reasons. Divorces to find relief from a marriage with a pattern of adultery, sexual immorality, physical or emotional abuse, severe addictions, neglect or abandonment. Today I'm going to give you some hope. If you need a life-saving divorce, your kids will most likely turn out fine as adults. This is just one of my videos on kids and divorce. Watch for the other ones, especially 5 researchers speak out on kids and divorce. Now I know what you're going to say. I was told divorce would destroy my kids, turn them into juvenile delinquents, drive them to abuse drugs or alcohol, and cause them to have serious behavior problems in school, not to mention automatically making them divorce someday too. And these false claims kept many of us in very destructive marriages way too long. Now there's no doubt divorce is an agonizing and difficult decision for any loving parent to make. Probably the most difficult decision in your life. The top fear for most parents is that divorce will cause serious lifelong damage to their children. And for those of us who were brought up in religious homes, we've heard that warning from the day we were born, and we believed it without question. We've heard sermons and radio programs and read books condemning divorcees as quitters who took the easy way out and didn't stay for the kids. We didn't want to be in that category. We didn't want to be seen as the person who sought our own happiness at the expense of our children. Even if we needed a life-saving divorce due to physical or emotional abuse, infidelity, child molesting, etc., many of us hesitated to get away because of those messages. Now, I'm not a licensed counselor, a psychologist, or a sociologist. I'm a lay divorce recovery leader. But I've learned a lot from reading real academic studies about kids and divorce. Major studies from universities. And here's the good news. Researchers have known for 20 to 30 years that none of those things, drugs, alcohol, getting expelled from school, none of these is likely to happen to kids of divorce. Does it happen to some kids of divorce? Yes. Does it happen to some kids from 2-parent families? Yes. Do some kids end up with serious and lifelong problems even if they have married parents? Absolutely. Does it happen to the majority of kids from divorced homes? Nope, not even close. Sadly, we've been fed well-meaning but inaccurate information rather than the truth. Because researchers know that on average, staying in a tense, toxic, destructive home where you're fearful and walking on eggshells is far worse for kids than the effects of divorce. Where is that line between a good enough marriage and a destructive home for kids? That's the question we address in this video, so let's jump in. Question 1. If I divorce, what is the likelihood of my children having serious, long-lasting damage? Study after study over the past 30 years have shown that nearly 8 in 10 children from divorced homes grow up to have no serious emotional, psychological, or social problems. Some critics are going to say, don't listen to Gretchen. She denies that kids feel any pain or sadness or any grief. Gretchen is just claiming that kids just sail through divorce without any negative feelings at all. But that's not what I'm saying. I acknowledge that your children will likely feel pain, sadness, and grief. They may miss the other parent and may cry a lot and even beg you not to divorce. Mine certainly did when they were tiny. But that's very different from having serious emotional, psychological, or social problems for the rest of their lives. While experts acknowledge that the first 2 years of the divorce are stressful for kids, it doesn't have long-lasting effects for nearly 8 in 10 children. My children turned out fine, and later they thanked me for getting divorced. But moving, going to a new school, observing conflict between parents, and going back and forth between homes does cause real pain and stress for the kids during the transition. But in the long run, the vast majority of kids turn out a lot like their friends from two-parent homes. This bar chart shows adults with serious problems based on their parents' marital status when they were young. On the left is adults whose parents got divorced. On the right is adults whose parents were not divorced. As you can see from the graph, the vast majority of kids, whether their parents divorced or not, made it through life without any serious problems at all. Dr. Mavis Hetherington, one of the top family researchers, started studying families at the University of Virginia in the 1970s. And by the way, she was married and never divorced. Later, she summarized her nearly 3 decades of research with 1,400 families this way. In the short run, divorce is brutally painful to a child, but its negative long-term effects have been exaggerated. And she went on to say, most of the young men and women from the study looked a lot like their contemporaries from non-divorced homes. Although they looked back on their parents' breakup as a painful experience, most were successfully going about the chief tasks of young adulthood, establishing careers, creating intimate relationships, and building meaningful lives for themselves. Her findings were replicated in later studies. Sociologist Andrew Cherlin from Johns Hopkins confirmed Hetherington's findings, but added more information. First, kids did better after divorce than even Hetherington had thought. And second, he discovered that a lot of the problems that children of divorce had was not caused by the divorce itself, but likely by marital conflict, substance abuse, or violence already going on in the marriage. He found evidence that many 7-year-olds were already exhibiting problems long before their parents divorced. So the notion that kids are too young to sense the tension and bad behavior in the home may be wishful thinking. By the end of the 1990s, other researchers were also using very large national population studies of more than 10,000 people that followed children and adults over decades and found that only 20% of adults whose parents had divorced exhibited serious problems later. Now look at the right side of the graph, the kids from married homes. Are you surprised? 1 in 10 kids from married 2-parent homes also turn out to have serious problems. Marriage doesn't protect children from all serious emotional problems. Now let's talk for a moment about the 20% who did end up with lifelong serious problems in adulthood. I feel really bad for them. We've already said they may have been damaged by the toxic atmosphere in the home before the divorce. And some, according to a 2018 study, may also have been traumatized by bitter legal battles during the divorce process. And finally, the child and parent's personality plays a role too. Some adults and kids do better than others because they're naturally confident and feel comfortable in new situations. Other adults and children are naturally fearful and have a hard time with transitions. And of course, each parent's mental health matters too. So what does this mean for you? If your child was fine before the divorce, they will likely have additional stress, fear, and anxiety about all the changes. But on average, within 2 years, they are likely to go back to normal. Before I go on, I want to say something. I don't want to shame anyone because we didn't know. No one told us back 20, 30, 40 years ago. I can't think of one Christian marriage book or Christian radio program that mentioned any of this. We didn't know. Our pastors didn't know. I don't remember Christian organizations like Focus on the Family, which was founded by a PhD psychologist, ever telling us this. We were completely in the dark. So let's go on to question 2. If I divorce, will my teenagers abuse drugs or alcohol? Researchers say your kids are not likely to have alcohol or drug abuse problems. In fact, the majority of all adolescents have no substance abuse problems, no matter what kind of home they come from. Only 6 in 100 adolescents in single mother families abuse drugs or alcohol, and only 5 in 100 adolescents in two-parent families. For single dads, it's 11 in 100. So no, your kids are not likely to have substance abuse problems. Question 3. If I divorce, will my kids get suspended or expelled from school? Researchers say your kids are not likely to be suspended or expelled. They aren't likely to have any really destructive behaviors. But I can see you now. You're scratching your head. You may have read a recent article from a Marriage at Any Cost organization saying that kids from divorced homes get suspended and expelled 60% more than kids from two-parent married homes. Here's the graph they show. The blue line is two-parent married birth families, and the pink line is separated or divorced moms. If you look down at the green line, that's the kids being brought up by their birth dad only. In the article that contained this graph, the Marriage at Any Cost organization made a big deal about how kids from single-parent homes are 60% more likely to have problems at school. 60%. That sounds scary, and this graph looks scary. But look at the scale on the graph. It only goes up to 16%. It's zoomed in. What if we saw this graph more realistically, say at 100%, not at 16%? Well, here we go. This is how it looks at 100%. Wow! Hardly any kids from any type of family get expelled or suspended. It's not so scary after all. Only 5 in 100 kids from two-parent families and only 8 in 100 kids from those single-parent families I mentioned. There's nothing wrong with the numbers themselves. They're from a large national survey. But the way they've been presented is misleading, and the way they've been interpreted in the text is, how shall I say it, a bit manipulative? So don't let Marriage at Any Cost organizations mislead you by how they present the information. Question 4. If I divorce, will my kids' marriage end in divorce too? Most adults whose parents divorced do not divorce. The majority of people whose parents divorced have lifelong marriages. However, they are a bit more likely to get divorced than children of continuously married parents. According to 2018 figures, those people whose parents divorce have a 47% divorce rate. Those people whose parents did not divorce have a 40% divorce rate. In other words, there's only a 7% difference between those two groups. Only 7%. Question 5. Are two-parent homes always better? That's what we always heard. But according to a 2003 journal article by Dr. Paul Amato of Penn State, children in very high conflict homes experience nearly 10 times more damage to their well-being than children whose parents divorced. This graph shows 5 types of marriages. And I admit it's a very complex graph. It was done for people with PhDs and it shows a lot of information in one diagram. So I'm going to show you my own simple diagram using the same information. Now look on the left. On the left we find very low distress marriages. These are marriages where the couple is able to resolve marital problems. And though kids may sense some stress, they observe genuine apologies, their parents making up, and better behavior leading to a better relationship. These are peaceful and calm homes, and the children feel safe. Then there are low distress marriages. These couples resolve most of their problems. Then the medium distressed. The couple has some ongoing, medium serious problems that aren't resolved. Then high distress. The couple has serious and ongoing problems that don't get resolved by a change in behavior. And then the very worst ones, the very high discord or very high distress marriages. The couple's problems don't get resolved. Family members feel tense and anxious. Sometimes the problems are hidden and covert, with no obvious fighting, screaming, or violence. But family members walk on eggshells. They only feel safe when the destructive person is away or not monitoring them. The spouse who's most invested in the relationship may keep trying to placate the other, but the tension doesn't get resolved. Researchers have found that divorce is bad for kids in the cases of the very low, and medium distress marriages. And that makes sense. Normal marriages have problems, and it's good for children to see their parents working through them in good faith. In these homes, divorce is really bad for kids because the parents are decent people and the kids are blindsided and betrayed. But in the high and very high discord marriages, tension is palpable, even if there's no violence, yelling, or visible conflict. Remember the earlier study that said 7-year-olds developed problems long before their parents divorced? Yep, they sense it. And research has found that it's likely better for children if their parents divorce than to stay in these anxiety-filled, agitated situations. And to quote Dr. Paul Amato, and I've edited his quote to keep it short, when parents reported high levels of discord, offspring with divorced parents were better off than offspring with continuously married parents. As we saw in the chart above, a very high distress marriage is often so harmful that the problems caused by the divorce process are minimal in comparison. In fact, about 10 times less. People going through life-saving divorces aren't looking for a grass-is-greener solution. They're looking for relief from destruction. Finding a new spouse is the last thing on their mind. They just want to escape from the nightmare. For them, the answer is clear. They have to get away. Here's the diagram for the high discord marriages. The damage done to the kids' well-being is 1.5 times greater for the kids whose parents stayed married. To give you an example of why this is true, in a 2009 study, children in high-conflict married homes were found to be more likely to binge drink, use marijuana, marry too early, and divorce. And it makes sense. If their parents' marriage is full of chaos and the behavior doesn't get any better, the children find ways to escape the misery. They may numb themselves with alcohol or drugs, or run away, or marry the first person who will get them out of the house. If the vulnerable parent stays in the nightmare, instead of setting boundaries, saying no to the abuse, and leaving, the children may even develop more serious problems. Kids need to have at least one parent who is nurturing and can get them to safety. And now, finally, one last study. It's the granddaddy of all of them. Before I tell you about the ACE study of 1998, I want to repeat something. No one at my church ever told me about this. Not my pastor, not the church counselors, not the Christian radio programs I heard. I wish they would have. I was already divorced by 1998, but so many children could have been protected if we had only known. So let's dive in, and maybe we can spread the word. Researchers did a huge 19,000-person ACE study through Kaiser Permanente and found that children who have been abused themselves or witnessed abuse, substance abuse, or mental illness were at a higher risk when they became adults for major diseases, and I'm sure I'm going to mispronounce this, such as ischemic heart disease, cancer, chronic lung disease, skeletal fractures, and liver disease. They discovered that many children who'd been exposed to 4 or more adverse childhood experiences, that's what ACE stands for, had serious health problems in adulthood. These ACEs in the 1998 report were psychological abuse, physical abuse, or sexual abuse, violence against the mother, or living with household members who are substance abusers, mentally ill or suicidal, or ever imprisoned. The more ACEs the children had been exposed to, the higher the risk, including increased risk for alcoholism, drug abuse, depression, and suicide attempts, plus an increase in smoking, having a high number of sexual intercourse partners, and sexually transmitted diseases. So the rest of the world has known for more than 20 years that it's best to intervene as soon as possible. Why didn't anyone tell us? We need to be ambassadors for the truth and tell others. They may not listen, I understand, but at least we've done our job. Now the question is, to stay or to go? Well, that's really your choice. Now that you know the facts, the ball is in your court. Only you know what's going on behind closed doors. Only you know how much you can take. Only you know your kids and your own abilities. Only you know when enough is enough. That's not a decision anyone else, myself included, can make for you. Your pastor, your friends, your parents, and your counselor are not entitled to make this decision for you. It's up to you. But you are not alone. The Lord walks beside you, and you can love God and still get divorced, and God will still love you, really. May the Lord guide you and protect you. If you'd like more information about divorce and children, please read Chapter 7 in my book, The Life-Saving Divorce, and be sure to watch my other Kids of Divorce videos.